We are the honest guides, and under normal circumstances, we guide you around our city in the 21st century, in 2022. But we found a guidebook, the very first one for our country, called Rivnáčův Guidebook from 1882. And today, we're going to follow it. Just to give you an idea how back in time we're going to 1882, this building wasn't around yet. Jesse James was killed in the Wild West. An American president was called, I had to look it up, Chester A. Arthur. Tuberculosis was just discovered, and the Brits were occupying Egypt. But we're tourists. We have just arrived to Prague at the main train station, so let's see what our guidebook says. As we open our 19th century guidebook, we read that after arrival to Prague, you have to declare your luggage if you're bringing any food. And there are officials and officers who will then tax you for the food you're bringing. But it also says here that they are very liberal, and you can just say you don't have anything and they will let you go. Officer, no apples from my grandma from the village. No, we're just here to see the city. Cool. Hey, don't forget to declare the food you're bringing, okay? There's a tax to be paid in Prague. What you got there? Some schnitzels from Vienna? The guidebook recommends that if you have very limited time to see Prague, only a couple hours, you should get a drožka or a fiakr. What is it? Well, it's basically a taxi, but a horse carriage. Drožka was for 2 people and fiakr was for 4 people. There were also omnibuses going from the train station, which wasn't a bus, but just a bigger horse carriage where you paid per person. Oh, sorry. Even though this guidebook is 140 years old, it is structured as any guidebook that we use today, and it gives you recommendations if you have 3 to 4 hours to see Prague, 1 day, 2 days, or multiple days. But it says that if you only have a couple hours, you should not enter any building or any historical site because you would run out of time, except for the St. Vitus Cathedral at the Prague Castle. You should enter that even though you only have 3 hours. Well, we're not going to go there. We do have more time, so I think the first place we should go to is to get some accommodation. I have a tip right here. There are many hotels listed in our guidebook. This one still sort of exists by the Golden Angel. Now it's turned into apartments. Back in the 19th century, the prices differ from 60 krejcar to 1 zlatý. But beware, if you wanted a light, electricity light, you had to pay extra. There's one more important tip from our guidebook for accommodation, and that is that if a traveler decides to stay a month or longer in Prague, he better rent an apartment from a local, where he will pay 10 to 15 zlatý for a month, including services. Usually those houses are marked on the door with a sign. That does sound like an Airbnb, to be honest. But just to clarify, you were not able to live in this house in 1882 because it wasn't built for another 15 years. That's how old our guidebook is, you got it? Well, we have a place to stay, but how about a place for some fun? According to our guidebook, this behind me is the German casino with the largest ballroom in Prague, 234 square meters. Well, now there's no ballroom, just one, but there's many rooms, and most of them are movie theaters for Hollywood blockbusters. It also says here that in the back of the building, there's a nice garden. Well, that one is still there. You know what is surprising though? Such an old historical traditional guidebook, and there's not a single mention of the old Prague traditional Trdlo. Must be a weird copy. At the end of Příkopů Street, on your left, a beautiful Wenceslav Square is opening to you, formerly a horse market. At the end, no longer you can see the Horse Gate, but a new building for the Czech Museum is in plan. Oh, so that wasn't there. You gotta wipe it out, Honza. I mean, we're in 1882. I don't need these. I got my guidebook. We have many things in common with this guidebook. We try to guide you, but also sometimes we criticize our city for some things. Now let me read you what this book says about the church behind me. Originally a Gothic place, built in the early 13th century, in the year 1740, old Gothic church destroyed, and today's tasteless was built. Tasteless. Not everybody's a fan of Baroque. I would never dare to criticize a church, man. Like, big balls. We are on the large square of the old town, and right in the middle is this Marian column from the year 1650. Well, actually no, because the original one from 1650 was torn down in 1918, and this one was rebuilt just 2 years ago. So that's not really accurate, but what is accurate, that the entire west side of the square is the Old Town Hall, which is also not here. There's a lot of mistakes in this book. This guidebook even recommends its competition, that you can hire a tour guide. It will cost you 50 krejcar per person per hour, and you can find these tour guides either here on Old Town Square or by the castle. There's total 7 of them. 4 are by the castle, 3 are here on the square. How to tell if it's an official license guide? He will have a black hat with a white C. White letter C on a black hat. That's how you spot official licensed tour guide. Dude, that's not an official guide because the C on his black hat is supposed to be white. This one's red. I'm actually quite surprised that the astronomical clock is mentioned here very briefly. It just says that it's here facing that street, and that below it, on the street, on the sidewalk, is a mosaic of the directions in north, south, west, and east. Well, that mosaic is gone, and now this mosaic is the calendar board. That's the only fun fact they have about the astronomical clock? Well, I guess our videos are a bit better. We are in the Jewish Quarter, and I wonder, what does our guidebook says about that? The narrow streets with old, tall buildings, and it's dirt. It reminds us of the medieval city times. Well, not anymore, because actually in the year that this was written, this entire quarter was rebuilded, redeveloped. The only thing that is left here from those times is here, the old city hall, Jewish city hall, and right facing it is the oldest Prague synagogue. Also, the old Jewish cemetery is mentioned in our guidebook, and other Prague cemeteries. Prague had a total of 7 of them, and the biggest one was called Volshansky. Now it's called Olshansky. I don't know why we dropped the V. And it says that it's half an hour away from Prague. Well, nowadays, it's basically the city center. If you follow our channel and the two of us, you know that we love to show you different places like restaurants, bars, pubs, coffee places. Well, it's actually very shallow on that topic in this guidebook. In terms of coffee places, it just says almost on every street, and they have many magazines. On wine places, it says there's one on Old Town Square, one in Karlova Street, one on Wenceslav Square. And in terms of pubs, I couldn't find any specific pub that is mentioned here, but it says in all of these pubs, you only get Pilsner beer. So that's a little disappointment on our side, because we really wanted to show you some place from the book. Well, eventually we did end up in a Prague pub with Pilsner beer that is very young in 1882, only 50 years old. And you probably noticed that we only covered few places, actually only the ones on the right side of the river. So if you want us to continue doing this, let us know in the comments. There's many more things we can show you on the left side of the river, but also on the little villages surrounding Prague that are now obviously Prague as Prague was expanding, but this book is full of stuff. We will link it below in the description because it exists in a digital copy, and I will see you next week on another episode of The Honest Guide. Cheers. Dude, there's some future in this. And in the end, I'm going to teach you a Czech word, and this time it's Království České, Kingdom of Bohemia. Království České. Království is kingdom, and České is Bohemian, because this guidebook wasn't only around Prague, but throughout the entire Království České. By the way, if you want me to be in the future episode of the historical guide to be wearing historical clothing, a guy from this store just told us he could rent us some. So if this gets 20,000 likes, I will dress up properly for the future historical episode.